Good evening. I'm Jerry Smith, Chair of the Human Relations Commission for the Village of Wilmette. I want to welcome everyone this evening. We are being recorded, and our first meeting of 2021 starts on a wonderful evening. The weather has improved significantly, and I look forward to spring coming soon. Being a long-term resident of Wilmette, I welcome my committee persons that are all here. And with that, I want to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
All right. Commissioner Dronin?
Here.
Commissioner Gilmer? You were still muted. You're unmuted now.
Commissioner Gilmer? His tone says yes, he's here.
All right. Commissioner Halige?
Here.
Commissioner Mothker?
Here.
Commissioner Myers?
Here.
And Chairman Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Teasdale will not be joining us this evening.
So with that,
yeah, Jerry, I'll go ahead and do the introduction. So this meeting is being conducted remotely via Microsoft Teams. For those watching this meeting in the future, effective in June 12th, 2020, there were changes to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, where public bodies may now conduct public meetings by audio or video conference without a quorum physically present when the governor or director of IDPH has issued a disaster declaration. This meeting is being broadcast live on our local cable access channel 6. It is also being broadcast on the internet on YouTube Live, and the URL for that is www.youtube.com/user/villageofwilmette/live. If you would like to participate in the meeting, you may use the Microsoft Teams app on any device for free. No sign-in is required. The link to join each meeting is posted on the village's website calendar at www.wilmette.com/calendar. The meeting will be archived on the village's website as we do with our other televised public meetings. A remote meeting requires a different mechanism for public participation. So to ensure that our residents, business owners, and other interested parties have the opportunity to participate in this meeting, we have solicited public comment prior to the start of this meeting via email. If you sent an email to publiccomment@wilmette.com prior to the start of the meeting, our staff will read the email during the public comment portion of our agenda. If members of the public who are watching the broadcast would like to participate during our designated public comment periods, you may submit your comment through YouTube Live at the appropriate time, and a member of village staff will read your comments to the Human Relations Commission. All comments to the Human Relations Commission will be recorded in the meeting minutes, as we typically do. When it is time for public comment, those joining us with Teams clients can toggle their mute status by clicking on the microphone icon on the meeting toolbar. Those joining us by audio conference dial-in can toggle their mute status by pressing *6. Only attendees can unmute themselves. No one can unmute another attendee. And just as a reminder that public comment can also be provided by emailing publiccomment@wilmette.com or through the village's YouTube live stream. Before the meeting, the Human Relations Commission received a packet of agenda materials. These materials are also posted on the wilmette.com, so residents and other interested parties can review the very same materials that the Human Relations Commission members received. Now I will turn it back over to Jerry to discuss the agenda.
This evening, commissioners, we have 5 major agenda points. We will go through appointed officer legal presentation. We will talk about the HRC action plan. We'll discuss the Black History Month contest, and we'll have information from Community Caretakers program, and then we'll have our public comment section and then adjourn. I'll turn it back over to Eric to introduce the next speaker.
You're muted, Eric.
Jeff Stein is the Village's Corporation Counsel, and he will be sharing his screen to go through the appointed officials legal presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chair Smith. So first, I want to thank everybody for volunteering and donating your time to help, which is going to be what is a great cause and will help the village. I'm an employee of the village. I wasn't always an employee of the village, but now that I am, I'm actually here working for the village 9 to 5 and often longer, as you can see tonight. So I'm here to help. If you have any ideas or any concerns or anything, not only am I here to help for the things I'm going to present on, but other ideas and other legal issues that may come up, please do not hesitate to contact me. So for right now, I'm going to try and share my screen if I can figure out how to do such things. Is everybody seeing the newly appointed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is essentially just going to be a primer of laws that now apply to you. And when I say now apply to you is that we don't like to tell you guys before you agree to be appointed to these things that there's certain laws. We like to do that afterwards. So you're stuck with these now, but we thank you for it. And they're very easy to follow, so we won't have to worry too much. But these apply to all appointed officials and elected officials throughout the village, and actually as well as some employees of the village like Eric and Alex and myself. Now, these are not all the laws, but these are the big 4 that come up with just the general you're volunteering and being an appointed official. And I'm not going to give you every nuance, right? Every law has a nuance. Every law has an exception. And that's why there's lawyers and judges to fight through that. If we did that, then we would need 5 or 6 meetings to go over it. So I do want you to, and I'll repeat this a couple times, if there's ever a question or a concern, please contact me. You can reach out to me directly via email, or you can give me a call and we can go over what that specific concern is, because every factual scenario is going to be different and it could have a different application of the law. So the Open Meetings Act, this is the one that's going to apply to any time that we're in a meeting. A meeting is essentially a gathering, which is what we're here today to discuss public business. That's exactly what we're doing today. It's exactly what the village board did last night, and it's what the finance committee is going to do tomorrow night. Specifically for the HRC, there's 9 members, 2 of which are students, but those are all counted towards the membership. So a quorum is essentially a simple majority. It would be 5 members. A majority of a quorum, and we'll discuss why that's important, it will be 3 members. So the majority of 5 would be 3. The general rule is that all meetings must be held and open to the public in a place that's open and convenient. Now, no meeting can be held on a legal holiday unless that's the regular scheduled meeting that falls on that particular day. HRC doesn't have regular scheduled meetings. We do them as needed and as desired, unlike the village board meets every 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. So that one doesn't really apply to you, but it's just something to be aware of because you cannot have a meeting on a legal holiday. Legal holidays are listed in the Banking Act, and it covers more than you would think. So always make sure you check with, if you want to have a meeting on a specific day, that's fine. Just know that your staff liaison will check with me to determine whether or not there's a holiday that day. Meetings must be noticed like they are tonight and have an agenda published at least 48 hours prior to the meeting take place. We've had this agenda on our website and published for longer than that, but there is a particular notice and a specific agenda for all these items, including this presentation. And a quorum must be physically present. Now, this has changed in 2020 because of the pandemic, but I don't know if it's going to remain this way or go back to pre-pandemic meeting requirements. But right now, there's a certain pandemic relaxation of that rule, which we'll go over. But otherwise, you would have to have at least 5 members physically present in the same place to have that discussion. Electronic would not apply. No final action can ever take place, and that includes recommendations, unless it's posted on the agenda and a vote is taken during the public meeting. So that's something to keep in mind. If you want to take some public action, must be listed on the agenda, and people must know exactly what it is we're going to be discussing and then taking action And pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, the public has a right to make a comment pursuant to rules. The village code applies to not only the village board, but applies to all subsequent bodies. That includes the HRC. The public comment rules are essentially 3 minutes per person. The chair may extend that, or a majority of the commission may extend that for an additional 3 minutes, or for however long is needed. Typically, we don't. It doesn't really come up. This issue doesn't come up too much. People go over 3 minutes a little bit, and we let them finish. But if someone wants to drone on for 20 minutes, that's when we can cut them off, because it's more of an interruption to the meeting than it would be trying to make the public comment. So now we're in the electronic age, right? So this is no longer back in 1970 something when telephone was the major electronic device. So a majority of a quorum of the public body, that's 3 or more, cannot discuss public business outside of an open meeting. So we can discuss public business. We can discuss even if it's not on the agenda, we just can't take action on it. But just knowing that you can't even have discussions outside of a public meeting. That includes emails and texts and Facebook Messenger and I don't know, smoke signals I have listed here, other types of things that are contemporaneous and that have are basically a way to communicate. Those media should never be used to communicate public business. Electronic communications among a majority of the quorum is going to be determined a meeting, and if it's not noticed and there's no agenda, it's going to be an illegal meeting. Whether an email is considered something that is going to be contemporaneous is not known right now from a court standpoint. The Attorney General has said that it is. The statute is quiet on it. However, we have the village board back in, I think, 2006 or 2007, passed a policy saying that public business should not be discussed on email between members of the same board or commissions. So rule of thumb is that chat rooms, Facebook Messenger, text, those are all going to be meetings. An email is probably going to be considered a meeting when you have 2 or more people on it from this board. So the way to send an email, if you ever had to, the way to send an email is to blind copy the entire board. And you'll see that from us, from staff. Staff will put what's on the bottom of this page here. All elected appointed officials are blind copied on this email to prevent use of reply all and electronic discussion. Therefore, it's not contemporaneous. And even the Attorney General has said that this is a good policy to have. So if I have to send something to you, or Eric has to send something to the board, to the entire commission, we will say this. We'll put this in there. We're not going to be sneaky about it, but we'll know that you cannot reply all to everybody, because if you did, even if it was a question towards Eric, that could be considered a meeting, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So you'll see these a lot. If you ever have to do it, which you shouldn't, this is the way to do it. What I would prefer, and what staff prefers, is that you have a staff liaison for a reason. And if you wanted to discuss something in a meeting or bring it up, and you didn't want to email Chair Smith because of our policy, you would email Eric Hallgren or Alex Artiego or me even. And you would say, hey, I want to discuss this at our next meeting. Then we can go ahead as staff members, as not appointed officials, and have discussions with the chair, as well as with other members of the commission, whether electronically or on the phone or anything, without ever having to worry about an Open Meetings Act violation. So staff is here for you, and we're here to help you get what you want on an agenda and discussed and recommended and voted on. So please use us for that. All right, so we are in a pandemic, as I don't know if everybody's heard, but it's been happening for a little while now. So one of the things that has happened is that the Open Meetings Act has been amended as long, and it happens, its amendment only applies to when there is a pandemic, when the governor says that there's an emergency declaration. And there's certain rules that are in place. Specifically, the rules that we all have to be able to be identified, or every commissioner has to be able to be identified when speaking. So the best practice is to obviously always have your video on, always have your audio on. If you absolutely cannot have your video on for whatever reason, you should identify who you are. This is Chair. This is this is Chair Smith, or this is Commissioner so and so, and then you can make your comments. That way, there's never going to be an issue when we're doing the minutes or trying to figure out who it was that was speaking. But always know that staff, we have administrative services staff, our IT people, that are really, really good and know this stuff and have set it up now, I would say, hundreds of times. If you ever have a concern or ever have technical difficulties, let Eric know, let Alex know, you can let me know. We will get the proper person from village staff to help walk you through it and to make sure that everything is working the way it should. The other thing that is relatively, it's important, and it's something that may be not necessarily unusual, is that all votes now must be a roll call vote. If you wanted to continue something, or even if you wanted to adjourn, sometimes the chair would say, all those in favor saying aye, okay, all those nay, okay, ayes have it. We can't do that anymore during an electronic meeting. Everything must be a roll call vote. So you must hear your name and vote yes, or aye, or nay. That's a little nuance, but it's kind of important. Training. If you have not been previously on a commission, which I'm not sure that anybody here has, you must complete the Open Meetings Act training within 90 days of your appointment. You only need to do this one time. You'll get a certificate at the end that says you have completed your training. It's not a test, it's training. And there are questions, but you eventually get to the right answers whether you want to or not. It won't let you go any further. And then we're going to email those over to our deputy village clerk, who keeps a tally of all those. This comes into play in case someone ever says that your members were not trained pursuant to the act, and we have then the certification saying that in fact that's incorrect. So just make sure you do that if you haven't done it already, and if you have any questions or concerns about that, please contact me or Ms. Norwood from the village, and we can walk you through some of that Attorney General training. You should already have an email from her at some point. So that's Open Meetings Act in a nutshell. It's very quick, very high level primer, but I'm more than happy to discuss some nuances with you. The rule that I want you to walk away with here today, and we're going to go over it again even under Freedom of Information Act, is really don't use email to discuss public business, and don't have texts or anything discussing public business with each other. If you want something discussed, we can put it on an agenda and discuss it at a meeting. You can also bring it up at a meeting under new business, knowing that you just can't take final action, but you can at least discuss it and have it put on the next agenda to take final action. All right, so Freedom of Information Act. Freedom of Information Act isn't something that was necessarily going to apply to appointed officials that don't work for the village or anything like that. They rather volunteer their time. However, there are certain things that will apply if emails or text are done during meetings, essentially, or during a certain time. So I want everybody to walk away with here thinking like, okay, I'm not going to have my email searched every time that someone emails me about something about public business, because I'm going to do what Jeff had suggested, and then we're going to go over that in a little bit. But the Freedom of Information Act, it's really not information, it's documentation, right? So someone can call and ask us for information, and we can say we can help them through it. But if we have documentation and that's what they want, we have to give it, with numerous exceptions, but we usually have to give that. And it only applies to documents that exist. So if someone says, I want you to create a map of the entire village and color code it for me, we don't do that. We don't have to do that. But we have a map. Obviously, we have a zoning map that we would give. So that's important to understand, that it's really just about the documents that we do have. So the Open Meetings Act and FOIA, they went on a collision course, I would say just less than a decade ago. But emailing and texting is really the new note passing, right? And if you do it during an open meeting, right now, if you guys are texting behind my back about me saying how bored you are, could be considered, and probably will be considered, a public document, because it's happening by you, the commissioners, during that public meeting. So the PAC is the Attorney General, essentially the Public Access Counselor, has determined that even if they're on your personal device, that they are most likely going to be public documents and subject to FOIA. Now, a court may rule differently, but right now, I don't really want Wilmette to be the test case. So keep that in mind. So the best practice is basically do not use your email to discuss public business. And I'm not sure if you heard me say that, but don't use your email to discuss public business. It happens all the time. So I have to repeat this a few times. The staff liaison is essentially your point person for any communications that you need. If you want to send a communication out to, like I said, the rest of the commission, if you want to send a communication to residents or to the village board or somebody, you can use your staff liaison for that purpose. And we may say why we should or shouldn't do that, but it should come from staff. that way, because we have the @willmet.com email addresses, and everything is on a server here at Village Hall, or there at Village Hall. I'm at home today. So that way we can do an easy search. We don't have to bother you or go through anything. If you do receive an email on your private email account, let's just say a neighbor or a friend has it and says, hey, I saw you on HRC and I really want you to discuss this, this, and this at your next meeting, that's something that we would encourage, and that's great. What I want you to do is, first, I want you to respond. I want you to forward that immediately to the staff liaison. And then we can either craft a response on your behalf, or you can respond, but as long as you CC and copy the staff liaison at Wilmette, we don't have to look through your emails. We have a copy of that email. So it really works in our favor and your favor as well. The problem becomes is when you don't do that. And then I have to say to you, okay, the Attorney General just gave me a subpoena and they want to see your email accounts for all public business. And you have to go through it on your own, or the Attorney General is going to go through it. If we can avoid that, let's avoid that at all means. And the way to avoid that, again, is just to make sure that someone from staff is CC'd on all communications, and you're not conducting these communications through email. So that's where FOIA becomes a little bit of an issue, or a big issue, essentially for people for appointed officials and elected officials during meetings, and as well as even outside of meetings. So just remember, at the end of the day, it's going to happen. I guarantee you're going to email somebody, or somebody's going to email you from a private account. To be honest with you, I do it because every now and then through my iPhone, sometimes it's on my personal account and not my work account. I just immediately CC it over to the work account, and there's a paper trail there, and I don't have to worry about anything else that's going on. I don't need people seeing my mortgage or my kid's baseball schedule on my private email or anything like that. So that's it for those two. So the Gift Ban Act, this applies to basically everybody that works for the village, as well as any appointed official or elected official. So the Gift Ban Act is really what it sounds like. You just can't accept gifts from just anybody. You can't accept gifts from people that want to do business with the village, or have some sort of relationship with the village, or something we regulate with the village. So. And that includes also any lobbyists. Not that lobbyists are going to be knocking on your door, but you never know. So just keep in mind, if someone is going to give you a gift and your relationship is solely based on the fact that you are a commissioner at HRC and that person wants to do something with HRC or the village and wants to, to be able to, whether it's nefarious or not, you cannot accept a gift from them. This, there's exceptions to every rule, and I didn't put a lot of them in here. I didn't put any of them in here, to be honest with you. But there's a laundry list of exceptions, and the big ones for you are always going to be the nature of the relationship with the person that's giving you the gift. If it happens to be somebody that you've known for 20 years and may now be a prohibited source, but they're giving you a Christmas gift, and they've given you a Christmas gift or a holiday gift for 20 years straight, that's not a prohibited source. That's someone you know. Right? If it's just a friend, a neighbor, and they have no relationship to the village whatsoever, then that's not a gift. I mean, you can accept, holiday gifts. You can accept birthday gifts. You can accept gifts that from the example I always use is if anybody else can ever receive the same gift under the same terms, then you can also receive that. Like if you were to enter a sweepstakes, or you walk into Jewel and you're the millionth customer and the balloons fall down on you and they want to give you a gift certificate, that's not a gift. It's one of those things, like, it when it seems a little off, you'll know it, and that's when you have to say, well, I don't really want that. I don't want the gift. Nothing personal. I just don't want to get in any trouble. Or, thank you so much. Why don't you hold on to it? I'm going to call the corporation counsel and give him the facts, and he'll say yes or no whether or not I should be able to receive this, because we don't want, these are now quasi-criminal and even criminal acts, and we don't want to violate those, obviously, either as a village or as individuals. And a gift it's a gift. It's anything of any kind of monetary value. It can be Cubs tickets, even though I always say that those really don't have a lot of value. The White Sox tickets are much more valuable. It can be golf lessons or a golf outing, or it could be cash, right? It could be, I'm going to give you a loan. It could be anything of monetary value. So you'll know when you see it. But if there's ever a question or ever a concern and it just doesn't seem right, based upon the relationship of the person giving you the gift. Don't accept it and contact me. The last one is Prohibited Political Activities Act. This falls under the State and Local Ethics Acts, and it's really any election. So it's not just the election that's coming up in 2 weeks or 13 days. That's the local election. It could be a federal election. It could be a state election. It could be any election whatsoever. It could be election for a referendum question. This prohibited political activities applies to you. And it applies to you in a very limited stance. So it applies to employees much broader. When you're at work, you can't do this. Well, you're appointed officials. You don't work at the village in the same way that Eric and I work and Alex work at the village. So what does that mean? Does that mean that you can never go to a political fundraiser or a political rally? No, absolutely not. You have a First Amendment right to support candidates and ideas and referenda that you want. What you can't do is you can't come to Village Hall and do it. You can't use village resources. So you can't come over and say, hey, Jeff, can I borrow a couple envelopes and the copier machine? You can't do that. And it makes sense at that point, right? The other thing is you can't do it now. You couldn't do something now to say, hey, I would like for you to vote for so-and-so at the upcoming election. Because you're now, essentially, you've stepped into being the appointed official for the village because now you're in the meeting. You're here at the meeting. So the rule is really anytime that you're at Village Hall, anytime you're representing the village in any manner, if you were to go to an opening of some sort of housing development or something that you wanted to go to and you were there as the HRC representative, you have to refrain from any political activity. You can't ask people to sign petitions. You can't ask people for fundraising or anything like that. But if you're not doing those things and it's it's a Friday afternoon and you're not working or your work allows this, whatever it is, and you want to go door to door and ring doorbells, you can absolutely do that. What I would refrain from though is to say, hey, I'm so-and-so from the Village of Wilmette Housing or Human Relations Commission. That would be a no-no. So you want to keep the two separate. That's very high level on 4 major laws that do apply to you. It's not every law and it's not every nuance of the law. I think there's probably 3 things I really want you to walk away from here is obviously don't use email to conduct public business. Use staff liaison as much as you'd like to help further your communications, not only with each other, but with others, and to put things on the agenda. And if there's ever a question or concern, call me and ask me. I'm here to help, and I'm here to walk you through all these types of laws and all the craziness that could come from them. With that being said, I'm going to try and figure out how to turn off my sharing. I think I did it.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a great evening. And we, again, appreciate everything, but I'm going to turn this back to Chair Smith.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions, comments to Jeff before he leaves? Commissioners? Well, with silence, let us move to our next agenda item. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Eric, let us have a discussion on the Human Relations Commission action plan and previous discussions from the administrative, or I should say from the Committee of Administration.
All right. Where I want to start off with this discussion is first to echo Jeff's sentiment from earlier. I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with this group. I'm very excited about the future opportunities that we have for discussions, building an action plan as a group over the next several meetings, and then really starting to put something forth to the administration committee about what we can do through the Human Relations Commission. I really think that our first step here is to work on a set of community engagement initiatives and then to have community-wide discussions, essentially like hearing sessions across the community to really get feedback from our residents and also to get the input of our commissioners on different topics that are open for discussion. I don't think that there are a lot of areas that I think are off limits for a discussion standpoint. When Chair Smith and I had our initial conversations, we had a discussion about equity regarding vaccine distribution and how do we reach vaccines to our portions of the village's population that might be difficult to reach. It was an area that I had not even considered being part of the discussion of HRC, and him bringing that forth is really kind of the impetus as to why we included the community caretakers update as part of today's meeting, because it is an equity component and it is something that is important to how we treat members of our community. And I really thought that was an important thing, and that the HRC could have input on, as well as having other ideas similar to that, that we can have input on, that we can solicit feedback from other community organizations. Staff can do research. So what I laid out here in the 2-page memo on the action plan is really just a broad overview of ideas that is meant to solicit feedback from the different commissioners. We can take your ideas, we can start to organize those thoughts. We can also come up with start to develop a schedule. We can really take this a lot of different ways. So I think really where I wanted to start off with Chair Smith is really just kind of running through an introduction with all of the different members, and maybe just a quick synopsis of your experiences, as well as kind of what some of your goals out of your volunteer efforts are going to be for the commission.
Is it open forum now?
It is open forum. So if you would like to start off, that'd be fantastic.
Sure, happy to start. Good evening again, everyone. My name is Malika Myers. I live in the village with my husband, Justin, my daughter, Olivia, who's 15 and a sophomore at Loyola, and my son, Evan, who is 12 and in the 7th grade at Wilmette Junior High. We moved to the village about 3.5 years ago from Connecticut, and we're from the East Coast originally. And I joined the commission because I had aspirations for our experience in Wilmette that are very well aligned with what the village has designated as the responsibility for this commission. That is, for the village to be a place that is safe and welcoming to all. And as a Black family moving into Wilmette, we very quickly found out that we stood out, and we were a rarity. And I'd like for future families, who certainly Black families, but other families of color and other families who are maybe different in some way than what is currently in Wilmette, to feel more welcomed than we felt, and for this to be a place that actually attracts families that are like mine. So that's what I really hope to accomplish by working on the commission. I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers.
Yeah.
I'll go.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Dronan, didn't prepare anything. We did the migration when our oldest, who's now 29, was a few years old, came up to Wilmette, mostly because of the neighborhood and the schools. I lived in the city before then. So we have 2 boys in their 20s, and then our youngest, Anastasia's, she's 20, and she's in the transition program at New Trier High School. She has intellectual disabilities. So I'm really excited, and I'm in awe of the people I'm going to be working with. I'm really excited about this. I think my area of expertise will be individuals with developmental disabilities. Of course, I have a lot of interest and some knowledge of the other areas, and I really want to learn a lot more. But I'm really excited about that we're making this a priority in the village, and looking forward to learning and working with you guys to make this a welcoming environment.
Thank you, Commissioner Dronin.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Hellige. My husband and I moved to Wilmette a year and a half ago. Previously, we lived in the city of Chicago. We have 2 kids. Abigail is 6, and our son Liam is 2. They're both adopted, and they're both biracial, and they are lots of energy. Keep us both very busy. We moved to Wilmette for, I think, reasons already stated, for the schools and the neighborhoods, but we did have a concern about the diversity of Wilmette. And comparing and looking at other suburbs, that kind of was confirmed when we talked to other individuals from Wilmette, and said, oh, Wilmette has a lot to offer. Diversity may not be one of them, but we love the community and moved here anyways. And like Malika said, I would love to make other families who are making the same decision that I made with my family easier. So they can see more diversity and they can feel more welcomed. And so I guess one of my main goals here is to just highlight and uplift the diversity that Wilmette has, because there is diversity out there. It's small, right? But it exists. And so I'd love to be able to show that, to share it, and to grow it, so that all families feel welcomed and feel a part of the village of community.
Thank you, Commissioner Hellige. Who would like to go next?
I can go next. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I don't have anything prepared, really. I'm very excited to be part of this commission. Myself and my husband moved to Wilmette probably about 2 years ago. And we initially moved from Indiana, actually, which is where my family is from. And my husband is from Skokie. So we, he's more familiar with the North Shore. And so initially we stayed in Skokie for some time. And then we had some concerns about the school. One of my daughters had an IEP. And so we decided to make a move, and we moved to Wilmette. For other reasons too. It had to do with my mother-in-law, who had fallen down the stairs, and the place we were living in didn't have a first floor. So other practical concerns, but we moved to Wilmette, mainly for the schools. And for me, our initial move from Indiana to Illinois had everything to do with diversity. I have 3 daughters. I have twins who are 10, and then I have a younger one who's 7. And when they were 5 years old, when we were living in Indiana, I had enrolled them in a ballet course. And this was kind of rural Indiana, very small minority population. And just the response that my daughters had in being in a ballet course, and the way that, other families interacted with me, I just realized that this was not going to be a place where I can raise my girls and feel comfortable. And I am a daughter of immigrants. My children will be 2 generations removed. They are Americans. They were born in this country. And so for me, I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I always thought of myself as an American, right? And, people initially growing up had a certain response to me because I looked different and I behaved different. And when I was growing up, there wasn't as large of an Asian population. So I kind of got that. I kind of understood people's reactions to me. But for my daughters, who are now 2nd generation, to be questioned as to whether or not they were American, to me, I just felt, that this was not the proper place to be raising them. So when we moved to Illinois, that one of the big things that I was looking forward to was having them be in a more inclusive environment and growing up in a more inclusive environment, as well as with myself. I'm a physician, and I did most of my training in Chicago. I did my undergraduate education on the East Coast. But when I was in Indiana, I actually had patients who refused to see me as a physician, who basically would say, why is it that you don't have an accent? And I'm like, well, I went to school here, I was raised here, I was born here. And their response was, well, you look different, but you don't sound different, And so I just never had experienced that before. And in Indiana was the first time where I had experienced that. And I didn't want, not only for myself, but my family and my children to be in that type of environment. We've been in Wilmette for about 2 years now, and 2 to 3 years. And I really would love to, participate in making this more welcoming. I think having people of color in Wilmette is not completely comfortable to everybody who lives in Wilmette. And maybe it's because there have not been as many people of color in Wilmette. That's possible. It may be some of just not having that level of exposure. But, even the welcoming that we got when we first moved into our neighborhood, we were kind of not sure how to receive it, So I'm looking forward to being on this commission to increase awareness about people from different backgrounds and cultures, in particular immigrant communities and Asian immigrant communities. I'm of Indian background, and my parents are from India. And so I really look forward to, participating in organizing things. For example, like Skokie has an international day where they have, as part of the park district, they actually have a festival that celebrates different cultures that live within Skokie. I would love to see something like that in Wilmette, because there are people, first generation, second generation immigrants of different ethnicities and cultures who live here, to be able to feel included and a part of the community and a fabric of what's happening here. So that's it. That's my huge big spiel. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Commissioner Moncor.
Yes.
Glad to have you on board.
If you can hear me, I'll go now. You can.
Yes,
okay.
I can, Van. Yes.
I have a deep history in America, in that I grew up during segregation. And so all of my growing up days until I was an adult, I was in segregated America. So it was quite different to try to matriculate in the first era of many things, like working for the Navy Department and being the first architectural engineer working for the group where I worked. I was then assigned to recruit Black engineers. There were none. So I started working at attracting Black engineers to the Navy Department. My career was a 37-year career with the Navy Department. And being there, I also served as an equal employment opportunity officer, first as just a collateral duty, and then to full time. And so working on programs to attract and to nurture people of color, any of the people who are discriminated against in America, is what I had as a job for a while. Now 7 decades of working, over 7 decades, of them working often as the only Black person, the only African American. And for a long while, I've just been moving ahead, just trying to do my best. When I first came to Wilmette was in 1967. And when I came in 1967, there was a welcoming community, but a welcoming community because I'm a Baha'i, and the Baha'i temple sits here. And so I ended up with really a diverse group of folk. But I came home, and I've lived here 14 years. I came home to a community where there are no Blacks. And so like all of the other people of color, it has not been a place where I have seen other people like me. I think it's a big task to do anything to begin to welcome a diverse population. And I think it's a lot of work, but I wanted to be a part of whatever it is we can do to start this ball rolling and to make Wilmette a place that is attractive to many people that's not attractive to now, might even be economically able to move here. So I'm happy to be on the commission, and especially happy to be with the people who are there. I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilmer. Welcome, welcome. Well, as chair of the committee, I do have a little institutional background and history of being on this commission and serving the village. Living in Wilmette for over 25 years. As I have heard, it has been a challenge when you look at diversity and you look at how you should highlight and celebrate the diversity that is here in the community, to use that as a stepping off point to talk about bigger issues that affect our kids. And I had two daughters who grew up and went to school in the Wilmette system and went to Wilmette Junior High and then on to New Trier. The opportunity to take advantage of this wonderful school system, but also to deal with the challenges of being, in many cases, the only or the very few. And I will say the very few. As I've heard from my other commissioners of color, it is a challenge. And I can say that the capacity of the neighbors and the community is broad enough and welcoming enough to open up and to recognize this, and I won't say it's just now, but recognize diversity. But I think as we look at this commission, we can serve as a place to be a sounding board and to be a catalyst both for change and also a catalyst for a place where, challenges and issues can find a place to be heard. I think, the greatest value that I have seen over the years is, where can I have my voice heard? And I will say, this can be that place. And so I challenge all of us as commissioners to have open ears, make sure that we follow the rules that Jeff mentioned. And I will tell you that I am glad that he did review them. And I will commit to Eric and Alex, our staff liaisons, that they will definitely be copied and communicated with when any communication comes to myself. And I hope all the commissioners here do the same. So with that, I would say, I think we have a good list and a good starting point of, of thoughts and commitment. And so, Eric, I would say, as you heard many of the commissioners, let us kind of summarize a little bit to the administrative, the commission, administration commission. I think we are here to serve the village. And how might we do that? I think we're going to evolve as we go along. But I would say, how do we ensure that people in the community know and they know they can come to us is probably the big first step. The big first step. I do recall some years back, and this is obviously before COVID, that, that there were weekends and days that, oh, I think it was the farmers market where we had listening posts, or they had set up, an opportunity so that the village was made aware that those would be days of possible, to come and talk to a staff member or a commissioner. That may be something that we may want to revisit. And obvious, because of HIPAA, I can't ask who's been vaccinated, but maybe as the status or the state opens up, we do have a little bit more flexibility versus Chicago and how we may set up those types of opportunities.
Yeah, I would agree with that last part on, I think a lot more options will be afforded to us as we start to move out of the current pandemic situation, and as we start to see more vaccinations. I think there will certainly be that opportunity for more community-wide discussions in person. So I don't know if Chair Smith, if you kind of want to go through, I know the feedback from all of you was fantastic, and I think really does help to set the stage for, I think, what one of the first goals of this group is to do. It is to listen and understand those experiences, and then from there we can develop action plans or ways to help to promote diversity, to help people understand what makes Wilmette the community that it is. And then those areas for improvement. So I think our first task that from the administration committee is really looking through is development of those listening sessions where we can hear additional stories like and experiences like everybody here. And so I don't know if we want to get into the next section of people's ideas about different events that we might want to hold, what topics we might want to discuss, what mechanism for scheduling. Do we want to see these every 2 weeks? Do we want to see these every month? We certainly don't want to lose momentum from whatever we build out of this. And then also the discussion of what other organizations can we partner with. Understanding that the school districts have different resources in place. Looking to the History Museum, looking to the Park District, to the library as places where we could potentially hold events, where we could potentially hold forums or other things like that. I think that tactically we should build out how we want to address listening sessions. If people have different ideas, we can gather those here, and then staff can pull together everybody's input, and then we can provide as part of our next discussion as HRC, we can pull together an action plan for these listening sessions, and from there there can be further discussion from the group. So Chair Smith, I don't know, would you want to open it up to the floor to kind of get input on kind of those different areas? And again, it's not limited to kind of those high level things that I laid out. If you have other ideas, please bring those forth. This was just really meant to spur discussion.
Let me open it to the commissioners on the floor. Follow on thoughts, ideas, please unmic yourself.
I have some ideas. I actually did talk to some people that I respect in the community to brainstorm a few ideas. And I think my first thought is we're really looking to support many segments. And before we kind of throw everybody together and have very broad community events, I know I, for one, would like to see if we can focus on the different segments and learn a little bit more, because I think while there'll be some similarities of issues, I would expect that there would be some unique issues with each segment. And that would be an opportunity to learn a little bit more about each of the segments before we kind of do a broad community event. I think people would be more comfortable being heard if, so for example, the area that I'm most familiar with would be disabilities. If we say, let's figure out some groups to partner with and some forums that would really be focused on that area, I think we'd be much more apt to get people to come forward and speak out, because that's, you know, a little bit more of a focused area. So that was one of my thoughts.
Any other, Commissioner Dronin, any other different or segments that you could think of, disabilities being one?
Oh, I mean, they're really well listed on our charter here. So certainly, you know, LGBTQ would possibly be a segment. Let's see. Well, I mean, we can decide how to segment, but, you know, maybe the Black segment would be its own, or the BIPOC, or how, I don't know exactly how we would segment it, but I think there are ways to, I think a lot of it is, well, you know, in our charter here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Dronin. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would just build on that. I think that's a great idea to understand the specific interests, and in terms of the format. I mean, I think if we go back to what we've all talked about, which is, I suppose, two questions in my head that I would want to ask each group. One is, how can we better support you as a resident of Wilmette? And the second is, what can we do to make Wilmette more welcoming for people with disabilities, or Black people, or LGBTQ identifying individuals? So I think if we had those two questions, that would really help shape the agenda that we then would create to try to achieve some of the things they'd ask us to do. And I suppose the only other thing I'd say is, we really, while we will maybe focus on some of the communities that are in the minority in Wilmette, we certainly have to also focus on the community that is the majority in Wilmette as well. Yeah. And making sure that we hear from that community the answers to the same two questions. You know, how can we make Wilmette more welcoming, and how can we provide, you know, more support in terms of feeling like a community and feeling included.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Good point. Commissioners?
I'll add, those were all great ideas. I think two ideas that I had jotted down preparing and thinking about this meeting, and they're a little bit more, I don't know, they're just two things that when my husband and I were deciding about Wilmette, one of the things that we looked at was, in touring neighborhoods and suburbs, was you know, seeing the signs that individuals had in their house, in their yard. And I don't know if anyone's seen that, but we saw in other suburbs, Black Lives Matter. We saw Love is Love. We saw rainbow flags, right? And it was a small thing, super small. But I think as an LGBT family and a family with biracial children, it really made us feel welcomed. And I know in the ward that I lived in Chicago, the alderman handed those signs out for free, right? So you could stop by the office and pick up a sign and put that in your yard. And you saw a lot of them. And you got the sense that you may not know your neighbors, right? Because it was Chicago, so you may not know your neighbors, but you at least knew that you believed in the same things, right? And I know that we saw a lot of that in other suburbs. We didn't see so much of that in this suburb or in this village. And so that was something that I thought could be easy-ish to do and maybe make an impact. The other idea was, you know, using the library and using the museum that we have, and understanding, you know, the history of Wilmette, and identifying if there was any, you know, diversity from the history of Wilmette, the founding of Wilmette, you know, well-known individuals who came out of Wilmette that represent diversity. Kind of highlighting some of that could be interesting. I don't know if that exists or if that's a thing, but, you know, again, I think what Eric said earlier, using some of those resources that we have, and seeing if there is something that we could talk about and use as, you know, there is a history of diversity in Wilmette. It's small, it's different, it's this, it's that, but it exists, and here's what it looks like.
Great points, Commissioner.
I had a quick comment to make too. That's a great idea. I love that, finding history of Wilmette where there's diversity represented. I mean, maybe even like a digital type of archive that can be, you know, placed in the library for people to look up. maybe, a presentation at one of the village board meetings of a digital archive of diversity within Wilmette and the history of Wilmette and photos and things that people have done. I think that's a wonderful idea because it gives a sense of the past as well as, what's leading now to the future. So I think that's a wonderful idea. I really like the idea of doing something, and I don't know with COVID, how realistic it is, but of doing something that celebrates cultures. And so, maybe it's like a taste of Wilmette and different restaurants of different ethnicities, like Greek restaurants and Chinese restaurants and Indian, fare, and having those restaurants, donate food and having people come through, whether it's the park district or maybe outdoors, to celebrate and have maybe certain performances from different cultures. I think something like that, when it's possible to do it, would be a great way to kind of increase visibility of the diversity in Wilmette and also have people participate in a kind of more joyful, kind of interactive way. So.
Good points, Commissioner. Very good point. Yeah, it would be nice to do a festival acknowledging different ethnicities here in Wilmette, as long as we can get out, of course, and it's safe. I
think we do have a very, very hard job. And the reason I say that is that missing from all of these groups has been African Americans.
Mhm.
I've been here for a long while, and I've been to festivals. I've been to a lot of things, but I haven't been to something that has made it openly known that we are really working at trying to attract a different population that is not here.
Mhm.
And I work on two other groups. One is called RAIN, Race Awareness in the North Shore. Also, HEROES, Healing Everyday Racism in Our Schools. Both very functioning groups, and both concentrated on really all people of color and anybody else who's excluded from our population. But how you begin to attract people is first you got to get their attention. We can't, maybe we have to do something to raise further awareness right here in Wilmette, because Wilmette could stay just like it is and have many people saying, it's a wonderful place to live. We want to have diversity, but we've got to really work at what is it that we must do. And finding those action items are the hardest, I think. They're going to be they're going to take a lot of work, but I'm ready.
Commissioner Gilmer, I can tell you, the committee, the answers are not all going to come out today, and it is going to be some work, but it's a strong and committed group like ourselves, and that's what we are here to cause change, to bring change. And I would say at the administrative commission was saying, what is our goal? Our goal is to facilitate and promote change. If you looked at the 9 proposed goals, I think, just listening to what everyone has said, I think we all are committed to those goals. And what I would put to the commission here is, if they were to ask Eric, I think I would like, and I think I have to ask just as a point of process, the goals that we have in our packet, do we need to, take a roll and vote on those particular goals to institute them?
I don't feel, I do not feel that we need to vote on those specific goals. I think that those have been laid out as part of the HRC. I think that if there is any intent to make alterations or additions or other things like that, that is something that we would need to come back and have a further discussion on, and then move up through the administration committee. But as far as these goals, I think that the intent of these was to try to provide that kind of broad swath for everybody for everything to kind of be captured in there. And so I don't think that there's anything additional in that space that we need to do. I think our real target here was what we've had a little bit of a discussion on in terms of listening sessions of really how do we get out to the community to try to hear them first, and then start moving into that next set of action items of looking at what kind of things can we do to promote diversity, what we can do to celebrate those different cultures. How are we going to hear everybody's experiences first so that we can have all of that input to really come up with a solid 2-year action plan of whether it's like a taste of Wilmette, like Dr. Mothker laid out some sort of diversity awareness discussion. But I think the first part is really that listening component, and how do we want to facilitate that discussion amongst the community.
I would say I think we have discussed this matter.
Yep. I did want to, just before, I didn't know how to interject these different moments, but from our other commissioner who is not here, Commissioner Teasdale, he did have several comments that I won't do justice to his eloquence in his email, but I will try to throw some of them out there. Regarding the listening sessions, he wanted to know if we wanted to have different prompts for these different listening sessions. So if we're going to segment these into different groups, what might be those particular prompts that we want to have for discussions with each of the different groups? Another comment that he had was, how would we collect that data? How would we want to utilize the data that we get from those different listening sessions? That's just an item for us to have as a consideration. And then his last major point that we had that he had included was, we talked about breaking them up into different categories, but his suggestion was also somewhere along the lines of considering that intersection of where these different categories intersect. So his example was, when we speak to our faith communities, I don't want to just ask them about their experiences of being visibly religious, but also their experiences related to race, gender, immigration status. So what I took away from his comments, and I can forward these as an additional packet materials later this week, but what I took away from that is we want to hear about each of the individual groups' experiences, but we also want to understand where each one of these groups come together and where there is that crossover, and how people who might deal with multiple might exist in multiple cross sections, what their experiences have been like in the community. So those were the comments that I had from him. I will forward over kind of some of the remaining items, but I think as far as action steps go from here, Alex and I can work on taking some of the comments that you have all laid out here. Again, try to work up a mock schedule of when we might want to have different events. We can reach out to other communities like Glencoe and see how they facilitated discussions during the pandemic. How did they get people to come together to have these broader discussions? And then to some of the other points here, such as Commissioner Heliges. I'm going to mess up your last name. I apologize. Heligi?
Heligi. Yep.
Heligi. To your point about having a discussion about the different topics and finding history through the museum or the library, I think that we can start to do some initial research in that space. So I think for our intent for the next meeting is that we will come back with a little bit more of a robust plan about different segments that we want to have discussions on, as well as laying out potential schedules and different community partners that we can work with, if that sounds good to the commissioners.
I might add one more thing, Eric, to that list. I think social media, in a pandemic world that we live in, right? If we can't do listening events or we can't do public things, is there an opportunity to use the village social media outlets in a way to get our message across, or to listen to individuals on social media? Direct messages or posts or comments or things like that. I know that I follow it, and that's how I found out about the Black History Month contest. So could we use that if we can't do in-person things? Would be another question I would have for you.
Yeah, and I think we could also explore kind of dovetailing off of that, if there's opportunity for Facebook Live events or other things like that that we might be able to utilize. I think those are opportunities that we can kind of add to how we would market this. But as the communications manager for the village, I think we will certainly have the ability to utilize all of our robust social media or our presence, whether it's Twitter, whether it's using Facebook or using Nextdoor for the promotion of our different activities.
Great.
I just wanted to, I think, piggyback what some of the commissioners said, in particular Commissioner Gilmer. I think part of our challenge, we're recognizing that we don't have many Black people in the community. So much as this is great that we're going to proceed with these listening sessions for people who are in the community, I think one of our challenges is understanding why we don't have more people coming to the community. So I'm not sure how to answer that, but how do we really get at what are the things that are discouraging people from joining our community?
I just want to say, so I'm of Indian origin. My husband's of Indian origin. When his family initially moved to Skokie, they actually asked to see houses in Wilmette, and the real estate agent refused to show it to them. So I think some of that is related to, I mean, I'm not sure the terminology for it, but I guess what I'm trying to say is some of that is housing related, right? So at that time, this was, many, many years ago, it was very clear that Wilmette was not welcoming to people who were not white. And it was at the very highest levels, like real estate agents refusing to show you homes. I mean, for me, like in Indiana, I know there was a certain neighborhood that we wanted to look at, and the real estate agent was very much so, nah, I don't think you want to be in this neighborhood. Let's go look over here, So I think some of it is as obviously times have changed since then, and that's not legal anymore. You can't necessarily do that. But I think that the history of it, right, the history of the fact that people of color are not in Wilmette was very intentional, and now we're reckoning with that history, and we're trying to reverse that history because, the world is changing. But I think that, you can't reverse however many years of that, like right away. It's going to take some time. I think the housing, and to Mr. Gilmer's point, I think a lot of this in terms of welcoming African-American communities to come here has a lot to do with housing, and maybe changes in the Housing Commission, as well. As much as we want to welcome them, what's going to motivate people to move, right? And so that, I mean, I think it's a much more complex kind of question. So my husband was very, very kind of nervous about moving to Wilmette because he remembered that history with his parents, and that when they initially thought about it, it was not even an option. It was very clear that Wilmette was whites only. And so I think it's a much more complex thing. I mean, as much as the Human Relations Commission wants to create a more inclusive environment and welcoming environment, Actually changing the demographics of who moves to Wilmette is more complex than simply our own commission. We can definitely help, I think, but it's a much more complex scenario.
But I think the fact, Commissioner, that we're having that discussion
Yeah.
and we have multiple points of reference will lend to the solution that we can start to begin that journey. And as Commissioner Gilmer said, this is hard work, and it won't be something that's going to be done easily. But I think the initial is how do you open and make it more welcoming. And I heard that point after point after point. So I think that's the first step that that we will continue to toil and think about as we look at our action plan and we meet our objective. Fair?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Van.
Well, I want to add one other thing that I'm doing personally, but it kind of falls into place when we talk about kind of an education that's deeper than the just diversity. And what I've been doing for some years, but now during COVID, we had to go Zoom. I have a once a month meeting. It's called Intimate Dialogue on Race, preceded by various scripture. So we start with prayers and scripture from many religions, but the discussion and this is another thing that's happening once we talk about what we do on Zoom. My groups have been as large as 180, and I have over 300 people who are registered. So and the talk is just like Commissioner just spoke. I had the same thing. Moving to Wilmette with my wife wasn't that easy, and my community still remains, and one other person who is of color, and it's been 14 years, and houses of soul. So people are constantly coming in, but they aren't all meeting this diversity piece that we were talking about. So there are a lot of possible things, and they're just in the area of human relations that we could do, because most people who come to the thing that I do once a month say they've learned things they never even thought of, like the little story told just a few minutes ago about not being able to even see a house. And I think that has something to do with real estate folk. And I had a good one. That's how it happened. The person was negotiating for me behind scenes, and it turned out I was able to buy a house. But I know others who have had that problem, just not been able to move here. And of course, that has to stop, because once you hear it, other people hear it. Even as we talk about the schools, the schools can't be integrated if there aren't people here of different colors. So it's broad, but I think our starting again is very important, because we can make a difference. This is a time when people are thinking about, maybe we should think about this. So great time for us.
If I could just add very quickly, I just wanted to echo Commissioner Dronin's point about being conscious of the small numbers that we may have in some of these communities, and trying to find ways to access and communicate with those communities. And maybe there are some organizations, maybe not all Wilmette based, but other organizations that might be able to help us in our outreach. Certainly there are a number in the African American community that I can think of, off the top of my head, but I'm sure that similar organizations exist in other communities. And also maybe for us to be willing to have listening sessions with people outside of Wilmette who represent the communities that we would like to see more of inside Wilmette.
Good point. Very good point. Commissioner Myers, very good point. Commissioner Drona, Commissioner Gilmer, excellent. I think we've talked about our mission and our next actions, and we will get a summary of what we just covered. But let me move us on the agenda item to our next item, which is our Black History Month contestants who have sent us their prized compliance to the competition. Can I move you to that section?
Yep, I can interject. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric, if you have something.
Alex, I was just gonna introduce Alex Artiega, our other staff liaison, who helped to coordinate the Black History Month student contest, and he was just going to provide an overview of the submission process and how this year's program worked.
Yep. So good evening, everybody. I'm looking forward to all the important work that we have to complete for this commission. Just a little bit about me. I'm a management analyst for the Village Manager's Office. I'm actually also a staff liaison for the Environmental and Energy Commission. So I'm happy to help out this commission as well. And again, I look forward to the important work that we have, that lies ahead. So anyway, that being said, we figured, as we were basically reinvigorating this commission after years of being dormant, we figured that we'd want to maybe kick off with a project that was kind of a staple of the HRC in years past. So back in 2016, I think was actually the last year that it operated. The HRC, the Human Relations Commission, would every year they'd have a Black History Student Month contest. And Black History Month student contest. And basically what that contest calls for is for Wilmette students from kindergartners to 8th graders to submit either a poster, an essay, a song, any really sort of projects, multimedia projects that celebrated Black History Month. And, because we were meeting at this time, March 24th, obviously nearly a month after Black History Month ended, we figured that we were going to get a limited amount of submissions compared to years past. But fortunately, we did receive 4 submissions from Wilmette students that I included in the staff, in the meeting packet. So anyway, that being said, I just wanted to kind of provide some information over that. And I know we started. So we started advertising this this contest back in mid-February. I know it was a little late on the ball to get it rolling, but we wanted to make sure that we gave students enough time. So students were informed. Basically, I emailed school administrators throughout Wilmette, both public and private schools. Also, the contest is open to any students who are homeschooled as well. So we started promoting this program, this contest, back in mid-February, and with a deadline of March 12th for submissions to be received. Like I said, we have received 4 submissions from Wilmette students. Most of them were posters. We did receive a song, though, from 2 7th grade students. Unfortunately, the song was submitted on a flash drive and has a bit of an odd file, so I wasn't able to get it to play very well on my laptop. I was thinking I could upload it to an unlisted YouTube account or YouTube channel, and I can send it out from there. But unfortunately, I won't have the song to play for tonight. The audio is just going to be too low quality over my laptop. But anyway, that being said, we did receive a couple posters and a song from students. So I figured I'd just kind of go through them. So our first project that we received is a poster from Max Suhu. He's actually a kindergartner. So glad to see that we have very young, students in Wilmette that are. I know it's really hard to see. Again, this was included in the project in the meeting packet, so I'm just going to go through it quickly. So this is Max Suhu's poster. Next up, we also received a poster from Kathleen Richards. She's a 2nd grader at Central, and she had something. Let's see, sure. Hers was Rosa Parks. So again, pretty simple. Nice poster though that was submitted by a student. And then last we had Alexa Geiger, who submitted a poster on Ruby Bridges. This is that as well. So I'm glad to see that we did receive a couple student submissions. And then in addition to that song that was submitted to us, we actually received a letter from one of the Wilmette parents that I thought was really nice. And I figured I'd read it for you guys just to see that, you know, this is our first meeting. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but it's good to see that we are already doing something that the community, you know, took note of and was appreciative of. So I'm just going to read out the letter that was submitted to me, or that was sent to me from a Wilmette parent. To the members of the Human Relations Commission, thank you so much for encouraging our students of this community to explore Black history in such a creative way. My daughter Kathleen submitted her poster a few days ago, and I'm writing about the contribution of music by my 12-year-old twin daughters, Nora and Mary Claire, who have special needs. It has been a challenge for my children to be included in many activities that kids their age enjoy. From sports to dance, we have been separated or invited to participate in other types of activities. Fortunately, my girls are very resilient and have found singing, reading, and playing violin to be other activities that they enjoy currently. In regards to the artwork for this project, I felt very passionate about my girls' participation. We have included a song about the inclusion and the pioneers and present-day heroes who continue to inspire our family. We have included a flash drive in the lyrics, which were written by me. I know that makes them ineligible for any prizes, and that is okay. I just wanted them to try their best and to learn about men and women who have made a difference with their lives and who never gave up. It has been really encouraging to learn more about the men and women in our history, and I'm so glad that the commission has been seated, and we look forward to your contribution to our community. Thank you very much for your attention and support. Sincerely, Eileen Richards. So I know, you know, we're late on the ball with promoting it, and you know, with a submission date that was in early March, I figured we might get a limited, you know, amount of submissions compared to years past. But to see that we had a parent and a family, and well, several families that were happy with the work that the commission was already, you know, approaching and continuing, it just makes me feel very fortunate and very hopeful for the work that we have that will, you know, that will lead to in the future, and just kind of seeing the difference that hopefully this commission can make. So anyway, that being said, we received 4 submissions. In years past, what we would do is basically we'd bring these students to a village board meeting and present them with an award certificate. Obviously, with COVID, things are a bit different. So I figured we could at least draft an award certificate and send them to the students and make sure that, you know, the parents are getting them. That way, the students are being well, congratulated for the work and for the submissions they gave us. And in the years past, we had monetary, a very small monetary amount. I think it was a $25 gift card that were provided to students who gave submissions to us. So I do believe that we are going to continue with that historical practice and award, you know, the submissions that we received. But anyway, so we figured it would be an easy not an easy project, but a meaningful project and a simple project that we could start off on a good foot on. And again, it is nice to see that we had, you know, a community outpouring to some extent and just showing us that, you know, the work that we have is important. So anyway, that being said, if we want to figure out, you know, what projects we want to award, I could take, I could leave them at Village Hall if you guys want to see them in person. I could, you know, we can figure out kind of how to go about, you know, I guess evaluating these submissions. But because we received 4, I kind of figured that we would just award all, you know, all students who submitted something.
I would say, commissioners, let us take a vote. Do we accept our participants, and we wish to recognize them all with a certificate and a financial award? Please take a roll and vote. Commissioner
Dronin. You are muted.
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmer.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Haligi.
Yes.
Commissioner Mouthker.
Yes.
Commissioner Myers.
Yes.
And Chairman Smith.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. That is glad to hear. I can start drafting award certificates for our students. If there are any messages that you guys want me to include, if you want me to scan any of the projects and send them to you directly, basically, if you want any more information on the submissions we received, please let me know. But if you want to include any comments that we can provide to our Wilmette families, I'd be happy to write anything. But I just want to make sure that the students were recognized for their submissions. So thank you very much, Commissioner. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Haliki?
Yeah, just a quick question. I wonder, could we scan these and put these on social media on a Facebook page so the public could see these submissions? They're really outstanding and wonderful. And so I'd love for the community to see the work that these kids have done.
Yes, we can work to add a link out onto our website, and then also put out Facebook and other social media posts that link back, and hopefully we can figure out a way to include the song and other pieces that are out there. So I think that we can work to do that as part of next week's social media campaign.
Even if we can list, the name, the grade, the school, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and
And say one was a poster. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to just to build on that. I also would think it'd be great to notify the schools that these students attend, because oftentimes the schools will then announce it at an assembly or in a class, and I think it will just help to reinforce the great work that they've done.
And to that point, maybe put the pieces of work publicly at the school. If we're going to make it public at the City Hall, but also maybe at the school would be great.
Absolutely can do. I was actually going to mention, so in years past, winning posters would usually be displayed upstairs at Village Hall, alongside other village artifacts. But with COVID, we aren't having many visitors that we had to compared to the past. So I think that's, promoting these through social media is a great idea. So we can absolutely proceed with that, Commissioner Helge.
Wonderful, good idea. And the school recognition, that's a nice extra that we could do.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
Let us move to the next agenda item, which is information on the Community Caregiver Program. Would that
So
be
I will.
Alex?
Not done speaking.
Yeah, I will do the lead-in
Go ahead,
again
Eric.
for this one. Just to Alex, I just wanted to provide the commission an update on overall vaccination efforts through the village. We've been providing several vaccination clinics. There were several that were held for municipal and educational employees at New Trier West. Yesterday, we held an event for 1,200 residents of the region, including residents of Wilmette, Winnetka, Northfield, Northbrook, Glencoe, and I believe I might be missing one there, but that we were able to provide in conjunction with Cook County and Jewel Osco vaccinations for 1,200 residents. We certainly have seen a desire for that in the community. Additionally, we've provided resources for 12 surrounding communities for their municipal park district and library staff. So all in all, we have vaccinated around 2,800 individuals since February 24th, and we will continue our efforts both at the municipal level as well as on a regional basis to continue to provide events for our residents and other community members. But with that, the Community Caretakers program is a program that we've had in place since last March, but Alex will kind of walk you through how that program started as well as its current iteration.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Eric. So me and Erica discussed this program, prior to the meeting tonight, and we figured that we wanted to talk about it because, the HRC is going to rely a lot on Wilmette residents to put in meaningful work and to be engaged with us to make the steps that we want to take. So that being said, we thought the Community Caretakers program was a perfect example of the type of community that Wilmette has, because ultimately the Community Caretakers program would not be possible if we didn't have so many residents and volunteers in Wilmette who are willing to help out their fellow neighbors. So anyway, that being said, back in March 2020, at the very early onset of COVID, we started formulating ideas for what was called the Community Caretakers program. And because it was so early on in the pandemic, we figured that, with Wilmette's relatively large elderly population, we figured we would have a decent amount of residents who were a little unsure or uncomfortable or worried about going into grocery stores to do grocery shopping or pick up pharmacies or whatnot. So back in March 2020, we figured we could start this program and basically it would offer like delivery services of groceries, of medications, of really any needed items. And it would just be entirely volunteer based. So we had a list of residents who were in need and a list of volunteers who were willing to help out. And in the first 2 or 3 months or so, back in March 2020, we did, I believe we helped somewhere around 25 residents in need with things like grocery delivery and medication delivery. As COVID, continued on and as the summer continued on, I think people got a little bit more comfortable and, going out to the store and, doing their shopping themselves. So we kind of started to see a decline in need from the community caretakers program. So it was dormant for the most part up until the beginning of this year. So at the beginning of January 2021, when the vaccine started to become more widely available to members of the public who weren't just healthcare workers, especially residents who are 65 and older in Illinois, we figured that this program could be reinvigorated to help out seniors with booking vaccine appointments. I'm not sure if you guys are, or if there's any commissioners that are, very aware of the process of what it is to try to get a vaccine appointment currently, but it can be a bit of a nightmare of a process, especially if you are not very tech savvy. And that's just because there are so many online pharmacy websites through Jewel Osco, through Walgreens, through Mariano's. There's different county there's the Cook County Community Vaccination Program, whereas I know like Evanston, Skokie, they have their own municipal programs. So there's just so many different types of programs that residents, also healthcare providers. So there's there's basically various options that residents have to kind of explore to try to find a vaccine appointment. So the Community Caretakers program really aimed to put residents in need, so mainly elderly residents, 65 and older, in contact with volunteers who are going to help look for open vaccine appointments online using the pharmacy websites for the most part. And from the very get-go, we started promoting this program at the end of January. And from the very get-go, we started to see an outpouring of volunteers who were signing up. By the end of the first 2 weeks, I think we had about 50 volunteers. Currently, we're at, I think, 148 the last time I checked. So in the course of a month and a half, or 2 months, I guess, at this point, we really grew our volunteer list. And again, it was just great to see that, this program wouldn't have worked if we didn't have so many people who are willing to spend a couple, an hour a day or so looking for vaccine appointments on the behalf of somebody else that all they knew, that this person was in need and lived in Wilmette. So fortunately, it does seem to be vaccine availability is becoming a bit more widespread. It's not as difficult of a process as it once was to try to find a vaccine appointment. It is still difficult, and they are still, released on a relatively limited basis, but it's far better now than it was in the third week of January. So anyway, that being said, about 2 weeks ago, and it took me so long to mention it, but again, the program would not have been able to succeed if it weren't for our partnership with the Women's Club of Wilmette. The Women's Club of Wilmette were really important in soliciting their own volunteers, and now since about 2 weeks ago, they've been operating the program basically fully. So I was initially taking resident phone calls and volunteer phone calls, and curating different catalogs. I transitioned that over to the Women's Club, and they've been great. They grew the volunteer base, and they were actually provided a list of residents who were deemed to be in need, who were 70 and older, using basically service calls from the Wilmette Fire Department over the course of the past 3 years. So the Women's Club was actually contacting residents directly to see if they needed help with, signing up for a vaccine appointment. So this entire program really would not have been possible if it wasn't for the work that the Women's Club was willing to do. So again, very much thankful that we have a community that has different groups, volunteers and residents who are also willing to help each other out. So anyway, all this being said, at this point, we have about 100 elderly residents that we know we've been able to find appointments for. So the Women's Club sent us an update at the beginning of this week. They weren't really tracking the amount of confirmed vaccinations at the beginning of the program, but in the past 3 weeks or so, they started to track that, and they have 75 residents they know that they were able to help out with booking a vaccine appointment, and it was estimated to be about 25 residents before then. And I know the vaccine is the step back to a normal world, and for a lot of our elderly residents, it was a very, very frustrating process to try to find vaccine appointments. So to have this program that really we're putting people in contact with them and helping them out, it's great. So just a big thank you to our volunteers, to the Women's Club, really everyone. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible without everyone willing to help out. And again, I think it kind of sets up a great stage for us because it shows that we do live and work in a community that is full of people who are compassionate and empathetic and want to help help their neighbor. And if the Community Caretakers program wasn't a perfect example of that, then I don't know what would be. I'd be happy to answer any questions or anything if you guys have, but other than that, that's all I have for the Community Caretakers program.
Great program.
Thank you.
Any other comments, commissioners? All right. Moving to the section of the agenda, public comments. I did not receive any. Did Eric?
So the village did not receive any public comments through our public comment email address. However, we have received one comment through YouTube Live, and the comment came from Cindy Fay, and it says, "Welcome, commissioners. Thank you for your service. Please make a public statement of support for the Wilmette Asian American Pacific Islander community. Please craft this important document tonight." So along those lines, because this was not an agenda item, it's not something that we can necessarily craft at this point in time and take an immediate action on, because it was not an agenda item to vote upon. However, we can open the floor up to the different commissioners, to the group to add any comments that you may all have.
So I'm pretty active in our school community, which is Avoca. And so there's been a lot of, social media posts about support for the Asian American community. I'm also involved in an Asian women's domestic violence shelter. And again, they had a national organization called the National Organization of Asian American Women's Foundation, where they issued out a public statement. And the School of Avoca also issued out a public statement in support of the Asian American community. And Blue Cross, which is the company that I work for, did the same company-wide. As a commissioner with the Human Relations Commission for Wilmette, I'm one of many commissioners. So this is not something I was going to post on my personal Facebook page. I think that this is probably something that all of the commissioners should craft something and have a platform where they can post something like that. I'm not aware that the Village of Wilmette has anything such as that, where you can say the Village of Wilmette, is in solidarity with the Asian American community or whatnot. So as a commissioner, that's not something that I would have taken a step and done, because I don't know of a precedent for that. So this is a comment specifically for Cindy Fay, if you're listening, which is why I haven't, publicly done that. Now, if the Village of Wilmette and the commissioners as a whole want to come together and craft something, and there is a platform and a venue in order to issue something, we can certainly do that. But obviously there's processes in place, like you just mentioned. This is not on our agenda originally. We need to craft something to come up with that. So I think it's a more involved process. So that's my statement in general. I don't know if the Village of Wilmette has a Facebook account or a social media venue where they may be able to have something like that where they can post.
The village does have we do have our Facebook account that we run weekly communications through, as well as our Nextdoor account and and Twitter, and then we continue to use our website as our other means of communication. And then our biggest form of communication is our weekly e-news blast that goes to several thousand residents that have signed up for it. So those are some of the tools at our disposal when we're talking about reaching out to the public.
Any other comments, commissioners? Thank you,
Yeah,
Commissioner Mothler.
I would say, Chair Smith, that I certainly stand in support personally of the Asian community and would be happy to participate in crafting a message to that effect. I also think it would be maybe equally or more powerful if that didn't just come from the Human Relations commissioners, but came from either the board of the village board or the village, if you will,
Trustees, yeah.
The trustees. So, perhaps you could do both, but I think that issues around the mistreatment of any people are broader than just that particular community, and it's bigger than the Human Relations Committee commission in my view.
Any additional comments, commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Helke.
Yeah, I would agree. I fully support the Asian American community and having communication from the HRC as well as the village on that. I wonder if it makes sense, to have a more immediate reaction to things that happen, such as what's happened recently, so that the village could take that message out sooner to the public instead of waiting for us or anyone else to have to create this message, right? I think as Commissioner Mothler mentioned, lots of other organizations, associations, schools have gotten the message out of their support. And it would just seem to me the village would want to do that same thing and be more proactive with the messaging as these horrible events occur or as these messages need to come out. But I'd be full in support of crafting something as well.
Commissioners? Gilmer or Dronin? Van, you're still on mute?
Yes, I said I don't think I have anything to add. I think something should be done. I'm not sure if this is the commission to do it, but yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dronin?
I concur with Commissioner Gilmer. I admit that I'm not an expert in this area. I agree something should be done. I'm not quite sure if we're the right place to do it.
Let me comment also. As the chair, we acknowledge that there should be a message of solidarity and support against the actions of the Asian community and support and be supportive to that community. I then, hearing supportive commentary from all of the commissioners, I would ask the staff, is there a vehicle to elevate and move a communication forward through the village communication process?
Staff, based upon the feedback from the commission, staff can work on developing a statement. At that point in time, we can determine what the correct avenue is and the correct timing and who that message should come from. We can communicate out to the commission as to what those next steps will be after the crafting of a statement. So we will work on something, and then we will determine who that should come from, whether if that's the commission, and then kind of what options we have in terms of if we need you all to vote on that, or if there's another way that we can get that message out sooner. So I don't have an answer for you on that right now. So give myself and Alex some time to look at that while we look at crafting a message, and we can work on something hopefully by the end of this week or the beginning of next week. We can have that provided.
Wonderful. Any other public comments?
We do have something from Lori Goldstein has joined as a guest, and I believe she can speak
Yes.
as part of this. So
Yes.
yes, I can hear you. So yes, you're open for public comment.
Oh, thank you so much. And I want to say my name is Lori Goldstein. I've been a Wilmette resident since 1994. I want to say hello and welcome to all of the commissioners. I'm so excited to see this commission getting underway, and I just thank you so much for your willingness to serve. I am so excited to hear the ideas that were mentioned this evening. I am all ready to put an LGBTQ flag up at my house. I would love to see lots of LGBTQ flags up in the community. I think, you know, just as there are lots of Black Lives Matter signs, I'm just thinking of my friends with kids who fall into the LGBT community, and I suddenly realize how much it would mean to them, and I'm surprised at myself that I hadn't thought of that before. I want to address some comments from Commissioners Haligi and Mothker, and also Commissioner Dronin. It was discussed the idea of bringing forth the history of Wilmette around the African American community, and also why more BIPOC people choose not to live in Wilmette. I don't know if you're aware, but former village president John Jacoby wrote 2 articles that appeared in the Wilmette Beacon that were entitled "Why Don't More African Americans Live in Wilmette?" Part 1 and Part 2. And then there was a 3rd article too that focused on some white activists who lived in Wilmette who were trying to make strides. So I have all of those copies, PDFs of those. If you have not seen them, I assume you all have emails. I'm not sure how to reach you, but maybe I can figure it out. And I also want to mention that around why BIPOC people don't choose to live in Wilmette. I'm also involved with Heroes. And this was something that Commissioner Myers brought up, which I thought was a really good idea as well. And we might be able to help you brainstorm on finding families, mixed race families or families of color that chose not to live in Wilmette that perhaps you might want to interview. So thank you very much, and I look forward to future meetings.
And Ms. Goldstein, this is Eric Holgren. You can email me that information. My email address is Holgren, so my last name HALLGREN, and first initial E @wilmette.com, and I can provide that information to the commissioners as a follow-up to this meeting.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you very much, Lori.
All right. With that, I do not see any other members of the public in the meeting. And Alex, have there been any additional comments on YouTube Live?
No, there have not been.
All right. So with that, the public comment section is concluded.
Well, commissioners, I want to thank you for your time and your future time and commitment that you'll be putting on this committee. You're a wonderful group, I can say. So with that, I will, I guess I should say, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And because there should not necessarily be a need for a second, I will not call a roll for vote, but in fact, thank you for this evening and close our meeting. Do I have to ask for a roll?
Chair Smith, we do need to do a vote for the closing of a meeting. I apologize for not making that earlier.
Nice try.
You see, I tried to go for efficiencies. Please call a roll to adjourn the meeting.
All right, Commissioner Dronin.
Yes.
Commissioner Gilmer.
Yes.
Commissioner Haligi.
Yes.
Commissioner Mothker?
You're on mute.
You are muted.
Yes, yes.
Commissioner Myers
Yes.
and Chairman Smith.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.